Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Skull Servant Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for Genesis format October 2025. Wanted to update the Skull Servant deck. While it does lack some of the link power that helped to speed up the graveyard setup, we can still utilize the 60 card setup of the deck since we can use the points towards that grass looks greener and left arm offering to give us a majority graveyard setup, along with using all of the new Skull Servant support that we received from the Alliance Insight Booster Pack. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters, running 3 copies of the original Skull Servant. The main reason we run this is because, one, it acts as an actual name for the Skull Servant lineup, being the original Skull Servant, and with some of the cards trying to keep as a point system in the deck, we can run Unexpected Die to special summon this card out onto the field, and then just thin down the deck even more, thanks to this one additional spell. We do want to run 3 copies of King of the Skull Servants. I sadly can't recall where I placed my 2 other copies, so 3 copies of our main go-to boss monster in the deck. The original attack of this card is the combined number of King of the Skull Servants and Skull Servants in your graveyard times 1,000. And when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can banish one other King of the Skull Servants or Skull Servant from your graveyard to special summon this card, having a pretty big attack point monster in the form of all the many different forms of Skull Servant that we set up in the graveyard as well, thanks to this card. So another definite 3 of, with the other 3 ofs being 3 copies of White Prince. With this card sent to the graveyard, you can send 1 Skull Servant and 1 Lady in White from your hand and or deck to the graveyard to banish 2 Skull Servants and this card in your graveyard to special summon 1 King of the Skull Servants from your deck, and this card's name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. So not only can it set up the original Skull Servant, but also the Lady in White, giving us more monster resource as well in the form of those monsters when we do so. The 3 copies of White Princess. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. If it's normal or special summon, you can send 1 White Prince from your deck to the graveyard. So being able to set up the card we mentioned before and then have additional setup thanks to this 1 card as well. And then also being able to send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to have all monsters currently lose their attack and defense equal to their own original level or rank times 300 until the end of this turn. So what's great also is that this card actually caught pretty good of a power boost since the Genesis format, and since there's no link monsters in this format, so all monsters will still be able to lose their attack and defense that your opponent may have for this card. So no restriction with link monsters not being able to be weakened thanks to this card also. And then we also run the 3 copies of White Lord. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects of White Lord once per turn. If you have Skull Servant or King of the Skull Servants in your graveyard, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard up to the number of Skull Servants and King of the Skull Servants in your graveyard. And you can banish this card from your graveyard, target a Skull Servant or King of the Skull Servants in your graveyard, and special summon it. So just having the additional setup, which each one of these can just help to extend into the King of the Skull Servants play for the deck as well. And then being able to have this card be the resource to use for those cards to summon them back onto the field also. The 3 copies of our White Mare. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. You can discard this card to activate one of the effects. You can target 1 of your banished Skull Servants or White Mare, return to the graveyard, or target 1 of your banished Lady in White or King of the Skull Servants and special summon it. So being able to either repower up the graveyard or summon out our Lady in White or King of the Skull Servants, which Lady in White provides extra protection while on the field. But before we get to her, also 3 copies of White Baking, basically an additional hand trap spot. Its name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. If a level 3 or lower zombie monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can discard this card instead. And if it's sent to the graveyard, you can add 2 monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, except for White Baking, that are either Skull Servant or specifically listed, giving you the search for all the other Skull Servants that we mentioned already. And then the additional cards being 2 copies of Lady in White. Face up level 3 or lower zombies you control, except Lady in White, cannot be destroyed by battle and are unaffected by the effects of spell and traps. This card's name is treated as Skull Servant while in the graveyard, so it can either be special summoned back onto the field or sent to the graveyard off of White Prince, as mentioned earlier. And then the last of the actual Skull Servant support being 3 Moisa White. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while in the graveyard. If it's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Skull Servant or 1 card that mentions it from your deck to your hand, except for Moisa White. So we can use this card to add White Reanimator from our deck to our hand as well. And then you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except for zombie monsters. You can use the effect of Moist White once per turn. During the main phase, you can normal summon one level 4 lower zombie monster in addition to your normal summoner set, but it helps just to grab additional monsters as well to use against our opponent, but also the added setup of those monsters to then be able to use against our opponent for what we may want to summon out also with our spell. And then additional zombie support include the 3 copies of Unizombie. You can target a face-up monster on the field, discard 1 card, and if you do, increase that target's level by 1. You can target a face-up monster on the field. Monster you control cannot attack for the rest of this turn except zombie monsters, and send 1 zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. Increase that target's level by 1. So just level adjustment, also being a tuner to help us go into some synchro plays in the extra deck. The 3 copies of Wandering Titan of Tartarus. If this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, send as many cards you control as possible to the graveyard and special in this card. Then send cards your opponent controls to the graveyard up to the number of cards sent as well. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this effect's activation. And if it's sent to the graveyard except from the deck, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So it's just an answer being a zombie monster, which can also work with the 1 field spell we run as well in the deck for our zombie lineup as well, being our Delta of Invitation. And then lastly for the monsters, 3 copies of Mizuki, which can be another monster used to special summon back King of the Skull Servants from the graveyard to the field. It can also be sent off of cards like Unizombie or set up thanks to that Grass Looks Greener. And then for the spells, 3 copies of White Reanimator. If your King of the Skull Servants attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent. Once per turn, you can target 1 Skull Servant or 1 King of the Skull Servants in your graveyard. Send 1 Skull Servant or 1 monster that mentions it from your deck to the graveyard to special summon that targeted monster. And you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn, except for zombie monsters, which is a big limit, because once again, we don't have link monsters to work with, but still, the main play just comes into the fact of setting up the different White and King of the Skull Servant monsters. The 3 copies of Left Arm Offering, along with the Grass Looks Greener, these are where the majority of our cards in the deck are going for the point system. That Grass and Left Arm Offering alone take up a good majority. The other ones just add more to the draw power and some of the extra deck cards as well. But it's just the mill power being a 60 card deck to use, and then have Left Arm Offering to search out our go-to card, which as long as the deck is a different number than our opponents, we can send a good majority of it to the graveyard to then utilize all of these Skull Servant cards that were sent there also. The 3 copies of Perform Pow Popper Up, which once again, this card can't really be used too well with the pendulum effect, but it's more of a send and draw option. Then you'll just take some life point damage for each 1 sent. The 3 copies of Where Art Thou for additional search power of our level 1 monsters. The 3 copies of Delta Invitation to send our bigger zombie boss monster, Wandering Titan of Tartarus, to the graveyard. And then also the 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, just a small point grab as well, with this spell being 5 points each for the addition to the 100 point count. Then 3 copies of Unexpected Die to summon the original Skull Servant from the deck to the field, with the last of these spells being 3 copies of Monster Reincarnation, just being able to discard some, Skull Servants in our hand to the graveyard or other zombies, and then grab a proper one we may need to normal summon out to the field also. With our extra deck, with it majorly being the synchro lineup for our cards, we run the 1 copy of Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord, the 1 Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon, the 1 Dragon Navy Mech, 1 Trishula, 1 Bryanak, 1 Ancient Fairy Dragon, 1 Ancient Pixie Dragon, along with the 1 Jiraishin, the Cursed Thunder God, the 1 Samsara, the 1 Black Rose Dragon, the 1 Starham, and the 1 Underground Fighter Balmung, with our only Xyz monsters being the 1 Tantrum Toddler, the 1 Lyrilusk Assembled Nightingale, and then the 1 Doubter Magician, just as a bigger go-to if we have to make use of our level 1 monsters for an Xyz play. Zeus just took up too many points to add an additional overlay onto these cards in the deck, but once again, it was just a little more difficult to get the numbers we need for the extract as well. But the main focus in the deck is obviously the Grass Looks Greener play, because then if you activate this card as well, let's say we go off of the initial 5 card hand and we either have the Left Arm Offering, or if you get lucky enough to open up the Grass Looks Greener in your hand, being able to send off the 20 cards from your deck to the graveyard can set a good majority of all the different Skull Servant monsters in the graveyard. Plenty many of them having special summon options in the form of cards like our go-to White Prince. And then all we need is either the attack position monster or directly into our opponent with our King of the Skull Servants. If we have White Reanimator, we have the piercing battle damage against our opponent to then be able to use to then swing in with King of the Skull Servants to then have the game-winning play, just needing at least 8 Skull Servant monsters in the graveyard or more to have the hopefully game-winning life point damage to use against our opponent. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.